Welcome to the CAN Repot podcast. Today's show is a good one. I interview Mike Zimmerly and Levi Hubka. We talk about a lot of things, including their platform of fundraising. Another aspect I hope comes through this episode is a relationship that partners on an ambulance quickly acquire. Good partners quickly learn a type of familiarization with each other. What normally takes months in a typical 9-to-5 job gets accomplished not in weeks, but in call volume. Stick around after the interview and we can do a little bit of housekeeping. We'd like to welcome today Mike Zimmerly and Levi Hubka to Waterloo Fire Rescue Paramedics. They're partners. They came on together, and they're going to talk about what their platforms are here on the CAN Report. Guys, welcome. Appreciate you guys coming in.
Welcome. Thank you.
Tell me a little bit about yourselves. Doesn't matter which one of you guys wants to start, but however you feel comfortable, whatever you want to talk about, personally anyway, how you got to where we are right here.
Okay, well, I'll start because usually I have to lead on everything. So I'm Mike Zimmerly. We've been on the department for 7 years.
Dynamite lead.
Yeah.
This is the softball-y part. Okay?
It was like
the tough part will get a little bit.
7 years.
Yeah.
8 years in November. Before getting hired here, I was a teacher. So I got a bachelor's in English, secondary education. So taught for 4 years before I got hired here. I was on the department for 3 years before we went to medic school. And then we've been riding 34 ever since, so I think 2018. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. So I grew up in Sheffield. It's a little town about 15 miles south of Mason City. Went to UNI, met my wife, was working at Menards and part-time at an unnamed fire department nearby before I got hired here. I mean, pretty much followed the same path as him. 3 years on, went to paramedic school, and got assigned to 34 with this guy. And here we are.
Very good. What made you guys want to decide to become firefighters?
I guess for me, I always knew I wanted to do it, but coming from a small town, I didn't really know that I could do it as a career. But working at Menards, one of the guys that I worked with was working at a different department. So I kind of got talking to him, and then my wife worked with a wife of another Waterloo fireman. So just kind of through some mutual friends, got interested in it as a career, and it's done. So.
Yeah, for me, my grandpa was a fireman. And then my best friends growing up were firemen. So I've got, one's a fireman in Independence, one of the full-time guys, another one's in Iowa City. So just kind of, that's what we all did.
Very good. It's funny you mentioned that part about growing up in a small town. You never think about firefighting as a public service that you can make a career out of. I was in the same boat, growing up in a farm up in a little bitty town called Cresco. Yeah, you don't think about that until, hey, people get paid for this too.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty. I think it's something that we as a department overall, all career departments, especially here in the Midwest, can work on, is getting the name out there that you can make a career out of this for the people that think this is only a volunteer type job. Explain the testing process to me. You guys both tested together, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we got one time at least.
How many times have you tested with Waterloo?
3.
3 times?
Yeah.
How about you, Levi?
Once.
Have you tested anywhere else?
Yeah, I was in the process of testing in Davenport. Then I took Cedar Falls test and was probably going to test all over, but
Sure.
worked out here. So.
Right. Mike?
So I'm not smart as Levi, apparently. So I tested everywhere. I tested Iowa City, Davenport. I did run through Cedar Falls system once, and then 3 times here.
And I think that's both a pretty realistic number of times. Very few people test their very first time at a fire department and get it.
Yeah.
It's
pretty competitive.
It's real competitive, yeah. How many people do you think tested it on your day?
I bet there was close to 250, 300.
So we got hired in 14, right? So in 2009, I think, was my first attempt.
Mm-hmm.
And it was at the Waterloo Center for the Arts, and that entire auditorium, or that conference room, was full. I bet there's over 400 people there.
Mm-hmm.
But it progressively kind of tapered down.
Right. Certainly numbers are down, I think, nationwide when it comes to public safety. Hopefully that trend will change around a little bit, but for those that don't know, for when we got hired anyway, and I'm sure it's the same with yours, is no matter how many people take the test, only the top 60 scores plus ties get to go on to the next section. So once you guys got the letter and you got into the physical agility part of it, was it any concerns with the physical agility?
I didn't think so. It was pretty straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
But
Did you guys take the practice turns if you had the opportunity?
Yeah, I took a couple, only because since it was my first time testing with Waterloo, I'd never seen a physical agility test like that. I'd taken the CPAT, so I kind of knew what that was about, but I didn't know what to expect taking Waterloo's test.
yeah, I had taken the CPAT as well, but Waterloo's is not, it ended up being nothing like it. But I'd gone through some of the practice rounds on the other 2 times as well, because I made 3 lists. I just never got my number called up.
Mm-hmm.
So I was pretty familiar with what we were doing.
Let's talk a little bit about medic school. So you've been on the job, you've been on for 3 years. What made you decide you wanted to be a paramedic?
Levi did.
So you're blaming Levi. This is on tape. This is how it is.
100%.
That's how a typical shift goes too.
Hey, why don't we go to medic school? I said, well, why us? And he said, well, it'll be all right. First guys through the wall get beat up a little bit, but we'll make it through.
Mm-hmm.
And we did.
Barely.
Were you the first class after Hawkeye Community College started the program back up again?
There's one guy that went through. Matt went through on his own, and then it was a couple of years later then we went.
Okay.
And it was a group of four of us.
Yeah, so it was, what year was it that you went into medic school?
17 and 18.
17, 18. So it was right when the national registry started to change over and the I-99s were lost.
Yep.
So that was kind of a big driver for me. Like, I always knew I wanted to be a paramedic. I never really had the chance, working full time, and it just never really worked out for me. And then
Well, we had that need because of the transition process, and the department lost quite a bit of medics because of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were short and hurting.
Right, we were, and it was a big deal to step up to take it. Who else took the class with you that was with us in the department?
So Kyle Flickinger, who's no longer with Waterloo.
He's in Des Moines now?
He's in Des Moines, yep.
And then Greg Freshwater. And us two.
So going through school, right, so both of you had graduated from UNI.
No, I graduated from Upper Iowa.
Oh, Levi, you and I graduated from UNI.
Yeah, right.
So you both have graduated from college. What were the big differences from that college experience to now? Were you both married at the time?
Yeah.
And did you have any kids yet?
No.
Levi, you still didn't have kids. Mike, you had.
I had 2.
You had 2 at the time you went through.
Mm-hmm.
Night and day difference, I'm guessing.
As far as college experience?
Yes.
Yeah. The first time it was, for me anyway, your typical college experience, and this time it was for a job.
Right.
And I knew what I wanted to do because I was doing it for work, and
Mm-hmm.
it was go to campus to do class and get
So-
out of there.
Yeah. So my experience was that when I went to college, I was a regular 18-year-old kid. I didn't get hired until I was 30 on Waterloo. I went to medic school when I was 33, so I had all my kids. My youngest was 3 or 4 at the time. It's certainly difficult on my end of it to try and balance that work and family and now school balance together.
Mm-hmm.
How'd you guys do it?
It was
I
rough.
got a short answer. It was just me and the wife, so I had, didn't have any kids to worry about like Mike might have. I could go home, take naps whenever I needed to, and
Yeah, it was pretty rough. So I did a lot of stuff late after everybody went to bed. A lot of the clinicals that we did were overnights, and then if I had a day off of work, then we'd have a clinical or some type of ride time factored into that. But it definitely took a lot of balancing between the 3.
You guys are both good firefighters when you were firefighters before you went to medic school. I know firsthand, Mike, I was a company officer, and you were my firefighter a lot, and I always loved having you on because if you're watching this on the YouTube, you're a bigger guy, certainly bigger than I am. It's that bull in a china shop a little bit. Levi, you're wiry.
Yeah,
we're wiry.
Built for speed.
Yeah, not for comfort.
Right.
Perfect. You're both good. I always heard good stories from Levi as well. Did any firefighters, senior firefighters that had already been medics or drivers or lieutenants, did anyone try to dissuade you from going to paramedic school?
No, not me.
No.
Personally.
Everybody's pretty supportive.
Mm-hmm.
I always gave the same statement of you won't regret it when it's done.
100%. I'm still on
Yeah.
board with that 100%. That you'll never regret your medic time if you go with the right frame of mind when you do it.
Right.
Yeah. Everybody said if you listen to guys talk about war stories,
Mm-hmm.
everybody's good stories are from when they rode the ambulance.
Absolutely. Yeah. I have family members that are disappointed that I'm no longer in the ambulance because any story I have is, well, nowadays it's basically just, well, I pointed at the fire and then the guys went and they put it out and then I wrote a report. Let's see. So you went to school with Greg Freshwater.
Mm-hmm.
Greg passed away. He
Yep.
passed away while you guys were still in school.
Yep, it was
Right.
early in the first semester.
Early into the first semester.
Yep.
Tell me about Greg a little bit.
I didn't know Greg very well before we started going to school. So he'd just gotten hired right before we decided to go, and initially he wasn't going to be allowed to go to medic school because we already had one from each shift going. I believe he offered up to pay his own way and make sure he had all his own coverage and everything. He was bound and determined to go. So I spent two, I think they were called mini masters, but we had 2 prereqs that we had to do over the summer. So I got to hang out with him quite a bit. I didn't know him beforehand, but he's I don't know if legacy is the right term. Maybe he's got
Third
a line
generation.
of third generation firefighter. So
And we'll have on the podcast Greg's cousin, Elliot, who's also a Waterloo firefighter. We're going to actually talk about legacy hires.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll talk more in depth about that, but it's certainly part of the whole culture of firefighting is those legacy people.
Yeah,
for sure.
I know your grandpa was, but none of us, the 3 of us, really are technically a legacy firefighter from Waterloo Fire. So that leads a little bit into the Greg Water Memorial Fund. You guys can explain what that is a little bit?
it goes through the Waterloo Community Foundation. They kind of facilitate a lot of things. It was established to kind of help individuals make it through medic school, kind of pay for books and tuition, or at least help out with it. I think Greg's dad kind of
Jump started it.
got it going with that because that's what his son wanted to do. So we wanted to provide that opportunity for other people. So each year, I think the department opens it up for 3 people, 1 for each shift, to kind of balance out the time off. But I think they go through an application process, maybe a meeting with the medical supervisor. But it's very beneficial for a lot of people who maybe don't have the cash to go.
So
It's not cheap.
when the 2 of you went, it was both on your own dimes?
It was on us.
And roughly, what did it cost to go through paramedic school?
Well, I had two prereqs beforehand, so
Because you just went to Upper Iowa, not...
you could,
Yeah.
That's a sore story too.
Yeah. I mean, English degrees, you don't do a lot of anatomy and physiology stuff.
Probably not.
Yeah, we just laugh at that. But
I'll never need this. Why would I take this
exactly. I think it was about just ballpark,
15.
12 to 15 grand or something like that.
class? So a substantial amount of money for
Yeah.
guys that are making $46,000 a year.
Yeah, the 2 semesters of paramedic school were about 10,000 plus books and everything else, and then there's the other classes as well.
So do either of you know what's the Freshwater Foundation? What's that paying towards it? Any idea how much? Is it float year to year on depending on how fluid the fund is?
I suppose it probably depends on what they have.
I think it could.
I suppose it depends on if we're sending one person to school or 3 people to school.
Yeah, and I don't know how they determine that or when they determine that. Regardless, whatever they give, is a big help.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, and I think it's not only the monetary support, which is obviously important, but it's also here's a sign that we support you and we want you to succeed and we need you to succeed.
Right.
So we talked a little bit about the community fund. You guys are both fairly involved with fundraising to keep that fund as healthy as it can be. Talk a little bit about some of the different fundraising activities that you guys, in particular, Ramrod.
So for the last few years, I've been kind of in charge of the golf tournament that the local union puts on. That doesn't directly fund the scholarship fund. We typically pick a charity within the community. The last few years, it's been the Veterans Transitional Home in Waterloo. They help veterans find housing, and it's kind of they have like a little store, I guess you could say, where veterans can come in. They can pick out some clothes. They help with food and that sort of thing. So all of our proceeds from the golf tournament go towards that. The first few years were right around $5,000 we'd raised for them. A couple years ago in 2019, I think we wrote a check for a little over $10,000. We skipped 2020 because of COVID, and then last year we were just over $6,000. I think it's about $6,500. So there's a lot of support in the community. We have a lot of businesses that donate every year, so that's good too to have perennial supporters. So
yeah. As far as the Greg Freshwater Fund goes, we do have a group of guys that host a fishing tournament every year, and last year they raised a pretty good amount of money that then was donated to that to help keep that fund going. So that was big. We did an inaugural bags tournament in honor of Justin Junk, who died
shortly
after Greg.
Was it a month?
Couple months, yeah.
So Justin and his dad, that was on the department, had played a key role in getting some grain bin rescue tubes, but we needed some extra equipment for that. So we needed it's called a rescue auger, which basically is operated by a drill and pulls grain out as opposed to trying to bucket. If you can run that auger and the bucket at the same time, it increases your speed by a lot. So we were able to raise enough funds for that to purchase that grain bin rescue auger. And then also we got just this last year was the whole hog.
The hammer drill, or
it was a right angle Milwaukee whole hog that we have a special attachment that fits right onto that rescue auger, but it also doubles. It's on 301, so that way we can use it for rope rescues with our skyhook setup. So it's kind of a multi-use deal, but we were able to raise some funds and get that purchased as well through some of our union activities.
If someone wanted to donate and didn't want to play bags or couldn't make it to a golf tournament, what can they do?
So they can look on the Waterloo Community Foundation website. They do have the different organizations that are within it that do for fundraising that you can find with the address in which they go. Or if you really wanted to, you could send it to the department, kind of in care of to me or somebody, Local 66, our local union, and then we can forward it on, for you. So there's multiple ways in which you can do.
And we also have a website, waterlooiaff66.org. It's our local union's website. It's still a little under construction, but you can follow the menu, and there's a contact page. And if you're interested in donating to the golf tournament or the bags tournament or anything, you can submit a form, and it should go to one of us. It might be your email.
It's probably mine.
And then we can get you in contact with who you need to get in contact with.
Awesome. We'll try to make sure that those get put into the show notes as well.
Yeah.
So that if people are listening and want to, they can absolutely donate.
I mean, it's big. We've done T-shirt sales for breast cancer awareness. We've done.
Still have some for sale on there.
Yep, we've sold T-shirts for our toy drive. So we go around to the local schools and they identify some families that may be in need, and we raise money to buy Christmas presents for them. And it's been big. Last year kind of dipped down a little bit. COVID hit us kind of hard, so fundraising has been tough. But I think the year that we raised $10,000 through the golf tournament in all, with the bags tournament, golf tournament, MDA, we were over $20,000 in donations that year that we had.
Awesome.
Charitable donations.
And that doesn't get brought up enough.
No.
I think it's easy for a taxpayer to just simply see that we're well paid and we have good equipment and we cost a lot of money. And we certainly do. It's up to us to make sure that they get their values worth. But these peripheral type things of donations, families in needs, we're horrible at promoting ourselves in that matter. I know there's a lot of other things that we do that just go on the down low, not being seen. And it's important that people do know that we do these things.
Yeah, I mean, we're all basically type A personalities, but when it comes to promoting ourselves, like you said, we are not very good at it. We have a social media guy that's supposed to be doing that for us.
Wait, me or him?
Both.
Wow, really turned on the you and I guys.
You're really making me look bad with the stuff that you're doing, but yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I just hit the share button, and then it's like I piggyback, so it's easy.
We're doing it. All right, moving on. It's called the segue, so we don't have to pick on Levi for a while.
I'm used to it.
All right, getting back a little bit into the operations part of our job. You guys got out of paramedic school, and did you immediately get an assignment?
No. So we have to go through. You have to go through a sign-off period, which is roughly 2 months ish. Yeah, where you ride with the medical officer to kind of learn. I mean, there's definitely a difference between medic school and being a paramedic in real life. So you learn the book stuff, and then you learn how to actually be a paramedic once you get out in the real world. So you can work with the medical officer, and they make sure that you know what you're doing, protocols, where you're going, how to operate things.
Teach you what you don't know.
Yep. And then you kind of move around and get an opportunity to work with most everybody on the shift before you are what they call signed off. So once they sign you off, you are dubbed competent in paramedicine, and you can operate on your own, basically.
Yeah.
So you both are assigned to 334, which is the ambulance on Ainsborough and University, and you're on B shift.
Yeah.
Were either of you on B shift prior to that assignment?
No.
So I was on A shift.
I was on C shift.
Had you two ever, other than going to medic school together and going through your initial training together, had you ever worked a shift together?
Nope.
Probably not, since we were both tailboarders. So
Yeah.
What was your first day like?
A mess.
Not great.
It was one of those deals where it's like, Dad gave us the keys to the car and said, "Don't crash it."
We were
And
driving
then
down.
neglected to tell you that it's a stick?
Yeah.
We were driving down University to our first call, and I was driving. And we got all the info that we needed. I don't remember what the call was, but he looks over at me. He's like, "Can you believe they're letting us do this?" I'm like, "No, but here we go." And 10 calls and 24 hours later, we're like, "I think we made a mistake."
Yeah. Our first month was eye-opening. You know, we had a lot of interesting calls that, we relied heavily on our lieutenant, Todd Peterson, was a former medic, that we called on him a lot to say, hey, what exactly are we supposed to be doing in this situation? Because neither in sign-off period or medic school was this situation covered,
Right.
So we needed somebody that had experience working within, the Waterloo Fire organization to kind of guide us.
And that's probably one of the most beautiful things about our department, is that transition from medic to then ending up back onto an engine, where you don't, I certainly am not the medic I used to be, but I can still determine if someone's sick or not, and determine if this is we need to get going type of call. And I also just remember, this is probably what we should do. To have those resources available, especially for new medics that are working together, trying their best. that are extremely heavy on the book learning, but extremely light on the life
Yeah.
experiences.
You come out of school feeling super smart because you're like, I remember all this book stuff because I learned it yesterday.
Right.
But the way that they tell you it's going to present in the book isn't exactly how it's going to present
You
in a
get-
person.
You get humbled quickly.
Yeah.
You do, and you
Don't
have to.
Yeah.
But just even like, like you mentioned, you haven't been on the ambulance a while, but you could be standing over our shoulder and just being like, hey, did you think of this? And it's like, oh, no. So that's helpful. We have a lot of guys that are on the engines that used to be paramedics, so I don't think there's not very often where you go on a call with a truck and there's not at least one former medic.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's super helpful.
So in that concept of basically that web of knowledge and experience, it goes beyond just Waterloo Fire Rescue. We have a really good working relationship with the police department. We have a good relationship with the emergency rooms. Talk about those things a little bit.
So those took a little time, mainly because they didn't know us, we didn't know them. So if we go on a call with PD, initially when we go, they didn't know who we were. They're used to who used to be on that assignment. And so it took time to kind of build that working relationship where they knew what kind of calls we were comfortable just going into on our own, or which calls we weren't necessarily, or know kind of when we should step in and when they should step in, back and forth, depending on what the situation is. If it's an aggressive person or if it's somebody that maybe just doesn't quite like cops, but would be perfectly fine with us, So, and then, you kind of add in the elevate element to it now, which has been helpful.
Yeah, it's a good resource. I can't speak for the PD's training, but I don't think we get nearly enough as far as like the mental health emergencies go. So just having somebody there, and our only resource really is, hey, we can take you to the emergency room.
Right.
A lot of times that's not the most appropriate, so having them there to be able to facilitate getting somebody to a different place with better resources for their situation, it's super helpful.
Just to back up for half a second for those that don't know, what's Elevate?
So Elevate is a company that has recently come into town, and they have their counselors. If they're not technically called counselors, I apologize, but
Social workers
that ride along with PD, and so that car is then designated. So if there is a mental health emergency or a call that could benefit from somebody from Elevate, then they will go and that person can facilitate the initial conversation, and then have maybe provide options to them that otherwise we would not be able to give. I know there were a couple of times where the person all they wanted to do was talk, and the individual from Elevate was able to talk to them, and then I handed her their card, so that way they had a number to contact afterwards. Felt a little bit better. Didn't need us, So it's just another kind of
tool and toolbox.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's a great one. It wasn't there when I was a medic, and I can absolutely see how a lot of calls I had could have benefited from something like that. I think it's a good program. Hopefully it continues to grow, whether it's Elevate or some other type of form. But I know that seems like it's going to be a trend nationwide, and I don't think it's a bad one by any means.
Right.
So for those that are unaware, and I'm assuming everyone that's not in this room is unaware, 3 hours ago we were at a house fire together. What's the medic's role at a house fire?
It varies. Yeah. Well, I don't know. Depends on.
You don't get to go in and.
You don't get to
put
go
the
in.
fire out.
So, our number one role is medical, right? So if there is anybody that is either in the structure or has had some exposures to smoke or heat, anything like that, that's our number one job. And if it's deemed that nobody's in the structure, we don't have to worry about anybody initially that was on scene around it, then we kind of focus on our own people on scene.
In case something happens.
Outside of that, we can
bounce around.
ladders, any type of exterior operations.
Right. There's always work to do outside.
Soon, when we just kind of stare at you and just wait for you to say, "Hey, why don't you grab that hose and just shoot water from over there?" And then you don't say it, and we just keep staring.
Yeah.
And just never. Eventually.
Right. I'm a pretty slow learner when it comes to that.
But it varies depending on what the incident is, how big it is also, because, with the Maple Lanes fire, for example, we initially staged, because of the size and the scope of it, we staged in another parking lot at another business and had to eventually work our way in to set up a rehab to provide water, a warm place, or cool place in the summertime. For people to rest, and if they just start not feeling too well, then we can assess them for any future. I mean, that's happened before too, where we've had to take individuals to the hospital, because either the heat or something got to them.
Right.
And it's a nice warm place in the winter to go sit for a while and thaw out, or in the summer when it's blazing hot, you can cool down. So
sometimes I feel like it's a sorely neglected aspect to it. Guys don't think about it, the rehab part.
Well, it goes back to that type A personality. I'm fine. I know I fall into that category as well. Of I absolutely should have gone through a rehab. I think it was a hot summer fire. I think I was on my 4th bottle. I filled up and I went and laid down for a second by myself behind a car because I didn't want the battalion chief to see, because I didn't want to not be able to go in a little bit again. Certainly, as now the battalion chief, I'd be lividly mad if I found someone did that.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a stigma to it that I think we need to kind of work on getting resolved. But
there's a lot of studies about the effects of increased heart rates,
increased body temperatures after the fact. They just keep rising.
And so like you said, it's really hard for guys to kind of step back and be like, all right, I need a break. But hopefully as some more research comes out, it's more utilized.
Right.
The importance is a little more obvious. So
I mean, we're getting better in terms of equipment. We're always able to get newer, better things that operate, but we kind of lack as a department some of our rehab aspects to things. Eventually, and this might be something that we maybe as a union kind of look towards and for our fundraising and whatnot, but Mr. fans, one of the pop-out tents, for shade for guys in the middle of the summer. Just little things that could probably potentially make a huge difference, because otherwise, if it's 105 degrees outside and you come out, you strip your coat off, now you're sitting in the sun in 105. You're not cooling down.
Right.
You're just making it worse.
And the scary thing is, it feels like you're cooling down.
Right.
Because you just took off that oven mitt and came out of that 400-degree oven.
Right. So.
And even like getting food and water on scene. Like, we usually have enough water, but you burn through a lot of calories going through a fire. Having something to replenish some of those nutrients, especially on the long events, which probably few and far between. But I mean, they happen enough that it's something we need to think about.
So, where do you guys? So, how old are you? How many years do you have before you're 55 and can retire?
22 and a half.
22 and a half. Oh man,
yeah.
I don't know if I could make 22 and a half.
That's a long ways away.
Yeah, I've got 19 in November.
What else do you
2041.
What else do you want to do in the job?
Well, I think the next step probably is engineer. When you first got hired, you have all the old guys that just say there used to be a set path. You get hired as a tailboarder, you go to medic school, be a medic for a while, you become an engineer, then you become lieutenant, and then we'll see where you go from there. But that kind of seems like that's the general theme of how the progression of assignments go.
And the driver's test is the next test.
Yeah.
So that'll be the next one I take.
Yeah.
And then one last little bit we'll talk about is, what do you guys do to stay mentally and physically healthy? It's a taxing job. It's a demanding job. We've talked about all those things. I'm 48. I know I'm not the firefighter I was when I was 30. We can't do this forever. So how do you get to the longevity that we need to have?
I think burnout is a big deal. So doing something to prevent that. I know when I got out of medical school, I thought I should get a part-time job riding an ambulance somewhere so I can gain more experience faster. But the more I thought about it, like, you ride an ambulance here for 24 hours. You have a night like we had last night where I think I was in bed for 10 minutes and then go do it again part-time somewhere else. I feel like that would just burn out or speed up the burnout process. So for me, I tried finding a hobby unrelated. So when I go home, I'm done. I don't worry about it, do something else. Go to the gym every now and then, but just try to stay busy, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Do other stuff unrelated to here.
I think the toughest thing is the sleep deprivation that can get you. You have a rough night, and then you go home. But you go home to a 9-year-old and a 5-year-old, especially during the summertime. They're ready to go, so you make it through the day. That's the toughest probably. But other than that, yeah, it's got to be hobbies. We were not to throw stones or anything.
Shameless plug.
We were gonna start a business.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't really know what. We just knew we were going to start a business.
The two of you were.
Yeah. It was,
we were going to dabble, kind of find our niche.
Yeah, Hubberly things.
Hubberly?
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, but then he decided to start another company.
Wow.
From underneath.
He left you?
He did.
No,
for his wife.
That's not how.
For his wife?
Yeah.
Not his partner.
No.
I know. I got messed up
I
priorities.
I'm trying to make sure this doesn't get edited out, but this is pretty groundbreaking.
Shameless plug. Hubka Design Company beat me.
We've been trying to set up an interview, but he just keeps.
Wow.
Yeah,
because I got an interview for it.
Yeah. Well, I go on their website and in their comments section, I type out a resume.
Yeah.
Yeah, submit it.
I'm not the CEO, so you'll have to bring that up with her.
Yeah.
Great. Anything else that you guys want to bring up? Anything you want to talk about? This is your platform to bring up your concerns.
No, I guess we kind of touched on a broad array of things. I know that we have a testing process coming up. Mm-hmm. It can seem daunting to a lot of people, but it's not all that bad. But if you only hear about the people that got hired on their first try, because most people don't like to fail, mm-hmm. so they don't talk about it. So it's more prevalent than what people think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so you can't necessarily be afraid to, because if you don't try it, you don't know what it's going to be like, and you don't know what to improve. Mm-hmm. So I'd love to see our numbers increase. I know PD had tested here recently, and their numbers weren't all that great.
They were horrible. I mean, ours are generally always better than the police departments, but they're still both been on decline.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I know you hear that people get concerned because they're worried about the physical agility test, mm-hmm. and again, that's just one step in the process. You can't worry about the whole thing all at once.
Right.
You don't have to be a triathlete. I mean, you got to be in okay shape, but you don't have to be some power lifter that
that concept that your mind gives up way before your body can.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. That physical agility test is absolutely 100% mental.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's not anybody that can't do it.
Right.
But it's that mental block of, I gotta go up these stairs again,
mm-hmm.
or I gotta hit this stupid Kaiser machine again, is what gets people.
And we touched on the sleep deprivation and stress and this and that, and I think despite all that, it's probably still the best job I've ever had. I don't really see anything I'd rather do.
I don't know what I would do if I had to go back to a regular person job.
Yeah.
Yeah. Way better than teaching. Way better.
Drove a forklift in the lumberyard, which was kind of fun. But
it sounds like a blast.
It was pretty fun.
I work construction, so.
Yeah. This is still better, though. Fire trucks are cooler than forklifts.
Absolutely. Well, once again, I'd like to thank Levi Hubka, Mike Zimmerly for coming on. Appreciate it. I hope this was entertaining for you guys as much as it was for me, and hopefully the fans like it too.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hi there, it's Bill again. Through the interview, we may have used some terms or ideas that you questioned their meaning. I caught a few and I thought I'd help explain them. The CPAT test is a physical agility test. It stands for the Candidate Physical Ability Test, and it has a recognized standard for measuring an individual's ability to handle the physical demands of being a firefighter. It is a timed test that measures how candidates handle 8 separate events, all designed to mirror tasks on the job. We also talked about the money that the Local 66 union had given to charities. After some research, since January 2020, the union has raised over $25,000 and given to charity. This doesn't include the MDA Fill the Boot campaign, in which Waterloo Fire Rescue had a record $31,000 in 2021. We'll have those websites that you can contribute to it in the show notes. Finally, the term tailboarder is a term we use in firefighting to talk about the position of the firefighter. So on the fire truck, there is the fire officer. In Waterloo, it's a lieutenant. There's also the driver, an engineer, and there's the tailboarder, the firefighter. In other cities, you may hear them called things just like firefighter, or they get called can man in the big cities. But here in Waterloo, it's the tailboarder. And that's our show. The show doesn't rely just on me, though. I'd like to thank my producer, Angie Beck, for knowing what buttons to push. Our original music was composed and performed by Caleb Martin. I'm your host, Bill Beck. Until next time, get out there and have your voice heard.